when I was at school as a teenager, the last place I thought I'd ever end up was there, without being kind of snobby. I always felt it was, oh God, please don't let me end up there, although I never really
I thought you were going to end up in Ibrox Park. That was the aspiration.
I did, but only spectating. Not that it was beneath me, but it wasn't something to aspire to. There were two industries in Lennoxtown, the nail works and the castle, and in many ways I viewed them the same. As that's for people that don't have ambition and that don't have an education and that they end up there.
I didn't want to be a nurse in the context of being an attendant within a hospital. I think that was probably, maybe that's being a nurse is maybe not the accurate statement. It's not being an attendant in a hospital. And I think a number of us came to that conclusion almost simultaneously. I can think of quite a number of folk, our contemporaries, who found that. It
was your father that dragged me into the job as well. I was intending to go and do teacher training, but was waiting 6 months to go there after the summer. And your dad said through my parents, who he knew, yourself and Alec Matheson, why don't you try nursing assistant in the castle for a wee while?
I don't think he was in PRP. I don't think he had a target to set. No. But maybe he had a view of recognising people that might be able to be able to do that job. Because.
But I had interviewed for a weekend nursing assistant a couple of years previously, but John Shields suggested I cut my hair, so that was no chance whatsoever.
That was never a problem for me.
No. Well, it was, if I remember right, at some points. But it was certainly, I hadn't a clue what to expect, and it was actually quite an exciting thing to do, to be exposed to such a strange world, for me anyway.
I think there was certainly an advantage in terms of when you started to train, and you remember the 8-week blocks that you went to, the fact that you had been exposed in some way to the hospital environment. And my exposure prior to working in the hospital to the hospital environment was walking through it on the way to school, and invariably folk knocking on windows and waving at you, usually the same people every day. And being invited along to the famous Christmas parties if you had the privilege, and also I don't know if you remember them, Mitch, but the more able residents of the hospital would have put on shows. I can just have vague recollections of them, because we're talking about when I was quite a young child. I think they called them Goes You Pleases, and there was some kind of pantomime cabaret type shows. Folk put immense amounts of work into these, and obviously I think lots of folk derived quite a huge amount of pleasure from them. So that was exposure. But actually I can remember the first day that I actually worked in a ward. I was after signing the papers with Jimmy McGarvey, I was consigned to Ward C at the time. Somewhere around about 7:30 in the morning, by which time a resident who clearly hadn't been very happy had proceeded to smash 12 windows. And I was quite scared. And I really thought to myself, is this really the type of place that I would like to work in? But I think you became an alter to that. I think you became in some way anaesthetised to some of the quite strange practices that took place. For instance, the shaving of 50 or 60 men at 7 o'clock in the morning, in a fairly mechanical
by one or two people.
By one or two people, and
whether they could shave themselves or not.
Yes, and if you were really fortunate, you might have a resident who would be the soaper upper, who would help you along the way. But you learn to shave very quickly. And you learned that if you cut somebody, that wasn't always a very pleasant experience for either the cut or the cutter.